The purpose of the training project was to give them more knowledge as to how you go about planning train services and planning public transport in a big city, and how the proposals they've got would fit into that plan, and how they could better perhaps forecast the demand for the services, because as you know, the line has actually been very successful in terms of the number of passengers, and we were giving some ideas as to how you could do a more structured plan for the whole of the city area, and thereby get some better idea of what the demand might likely to be. You have clearly got a big transport problem in the city. You've got a lot of congestion, and therefore there is a need to have some further good look at what the issues are, what the main demand routes are, and identify corridors where further public transport improvements can be made. Because really you've got a city that's largely based on private cars and small buses, which is very difficult for a big city because you run out of road space, and that's basically what's happened. We were putting forward an idea that if you want to look at the issue and how many other large cities in Europe and around the world have done, they've had a proper study team which has been set up. They've looked at what the transport infrastructure is today, they've looked at what the demand is going to be in the future, and they've therefore tried to produce a plan properly modelled. I mean, it's a proper scientific way of doing it, to produce a plan which will forecast the demand. And then you can look at the public transport, the most appropriate way of meeting that public transport demand, whether it be by buses or underground, metro. I mean, there's a lot of choices. There might even be some cable cars here with some of the high gradients that you've got on the hills surrounding the city. Our main thrust has been on as infrastructure experts. That's what our main thrust of our company is. We're anxious to get more work in this area, and this is why we've effectively been trying to help the government and establish what could be done in the city in terms of demand for transport. But it'll be a joint effort with a lot of companies. That will be the objective, inevitably. A lot of work to be done. I've been to a lot of cities around the world where, because the cities have grown very rapidly, they've got very large populations, several million, 7 million, 10 million, and obviously if you're going to run a city effectively, you need public transport, because the amount of space that is required for a road network to meet the demands of a city reaches the point where most of the city centre almost needs to be roads to accommodate all the traffic. So you've got to look at a public transport solution, and I would suggest more underground lines, because of the shortage of space, is probably going to be the most attractive way of doing it. But it doesn't necessarily mean they need to be underground all the way out to the suburbs. There might be part surface, and then as they come into the central area where land is obviously more difficult to get, they could be well be underground from that section.